So in today's video, I wanted to compare how does a new camera, like the Sony A7 III, paired with a not well regarded kit lens, something like a 28-70, and see how that compares against the much older camera, like a Canon T3i, versus the Sigma, paired with the Sigma 1.4 40mm. Right off the bat, we see some differences in how the sensors are made and produced, with this Sony being able to read out much higher levels of light. We're going to bump this up about a stop in order to make things more clear. We can see the Sony has a much higher advantage in the shadows, being able to show off a lot more clarity and a higher level of smoothness. However, once we go into slightly more highlighted area, the difference is still in favor of the Sony, but now we start to see the differences in lenses, with the Sony being a much softer lens, whereas the Sigma still shows good levels of sharpness throughout. That extends well into the corners of the frame as well. Additionally, one reason why you'll see that a lot of people recommend getting what are called nifty 50s are the reason being that they have wide apertures for a low cost, as well as being fairly sharp. In this case, I'm going to kind of emulate that with the 40mm, but this is quite in the opposite realm of the nifty 50 being significantly more expensive. That's the point of this video, with it much higher quality lens versus high quality camera and cheaper lens. So again, we're going to apply the same one-stop increase for accounting for the differences in sensors, but when we go back to the shadows, we start to see that I would argue the Canon has a slight advantage in the darker shadows, but all throughout we can see that the noise overall, especially in the highlights or in highlighted areas, is smoother for the Canon. And 100% we can still see that they're pretty similar, but once we start to punch into details like here, we see now that the Canon, thanks to being able to drop the ISO significantly, even after being bumped up a stop, is still very, very clear. It's even clearer than the Sony. And also, because of the Sigma lens being as sharp as it is, we see that it out-resolves the Sony, even with the small depth of field and the wide aperture, being at such a wide aperture as well. Finally, I wanted to compare against a reference image here at ISO 100 and another at ISO 100 as well. We're going to remove the additional settings that were applied, make sure that they are comparable. And so we see again differences in sensors, so they're both shot at the same settings, but we're going to bring the Canon back up one stop in order to see. In this case, we actually don't need to bring it up a full stop. Bring it up about half a stop. See how that compares now. So at their base level values, how do they compare? The Sigma is quite a bit sharper. Now the advantages and the differences of ISO are gone, but we can see that the Sigma resolves a significant amount. Even as we start to plunge into the corners, we see the Sony lens really struggles in the corners, the far corners. And that only really that really makes a lot of sense considering the differences in cost here. And again, if we were to compare, even as we get close to the center here, we can still see there's a high level of difference in the center of the image where the sigma is just bitingly sharp. You can see every little nook and cranny, whereas here it starts to smoothen out quite a bit. And it shows a good amount of softness in comparison. You can see quite a bit of difference. And while on the surface they do look pretty comparable, once having punched in, you'll have noticed a difference on how different they are. And you can also see different characteristics like contrast on how the sigma is just quite a bit sharper or quite a bit more contrasty in comparison. And so this is not supposed to be an end-all be-all on always buy cheap bodies and just pair them up with high-quality glass, but it's to kind of see how does the adage of buying a cheaper body and pairing it with, or affording less of your budget to a high-quality camera and affording more of your budget to high-quality glass gives you a higher level of, can give you a higher standard of quality than a high-end body paired with cheaper glass at the end. So, thanks for watching. My name is Chris, and have a great day.